The observation deck overlooked the training hall through reinforced crystal panels designed to withstand weapons fire. Queen Sarantha's four eyes tracked every movement below with practiced precision. Around her stood a dozen military advisors and diplomatic envoys from 6 allied worlds, all gathered to witness the final evaluation of cadets who would serve across the Galactic Coalition. "The next demonstration will be close-quarters combat proficiency," announced the training master through the intercom. Sarantha's primary eyes focused on the human cadet stepping into the center ring. Kayla Chen looked unremarkable by human standards. Average height, lean build, dark hair pulled back in standard military fashion. Nothing suggested she was anything other than another recruit hoping to prove herself worthy. Across from her stood Vornak, an elite warrior from the Korthan Empire. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with muscle density that made humans look like they were built from paper and hope. His exoskeleton gleamed under the training hall lights and his forearms flexed in anticipation. The Korthan had held the combat championship for 3 years running.
"This is absurd," muttered Ambassador Threkis beside Sarantha.
Humans have barely qualified for coalition membership. Their physical capabilities are laughable compared to established warrior races. Sarantha said nothing. She had learned during her century of rule that silence often revealed more than words. Below, Vornak charged. His speed defied his massive frame, a blur of controlled aggression that had ended dozens of matches in seconds. Chen didn't move. She remained seated in the designated starting position, legs crossed, hands resting on her knees. The entire observation deck leaned forward. Vornak's primary right arm swung in a strike that would have pulverized a standard combat dummy. Chen's hand moved in a motion so small that Sarantha almost missed it. A slight shift of her wrist, fingers extending. The trajectory wasn't a block. The sound came first. A sharp crack that echoed through the chamber, clear even through the observation glass. Then Vornak's roar of pain as his arm bent at an angle that violated his species' biological structure. He stumbled back, and Chen rose from her seated position in one fluid motion, stepping aside as his massive body crashed to the floor. The training hall fell silent. Chen remained standing, her expression neutral, her breathing steady. She hadn't broken a sweat. She hadn't even left the mat where she'd been sitting. "Impossible," Threkis whispered. Sarantha's secondary eyes narrowed. She had watched thousands of combat demonstrations across hundreds of worlds. What she had just witnessed violated every principle of physics and force dynamics she understood. A human, one of the physically weakest sapient species in the Coalition, had disabled an elite Korthan warrior without standing up, without visible exertion, without employing any technology or enhancement. "Replay the footage," she commanded. The holographic display activated, showing the encounter from multiple angles in slow motion. Sarantha studied Chen's movement frame by frame. The cadet's hand had made contact with Vornak's attacking arm for exactly 0.73 seconds. During that contact, her fingers had pressed 3 specific points along his exoskeleton seam, and she had rotated her wrist in a controlled spiral pattern. The result had been the redirection of Vornak's entire momentum and mass through his own limb structure. Chen hadn't broken his arm with strength. She had guided his own force to break it for him. "That's a discipline called joint manipulation," explained a voice behind Sarantha. She turned to find Captain Marcus Webb, the human liaison officer, standing at parade rest. His presence here was protocol. Every species with cadets in evaluation had a representative observer. She had paid him little attention until now. "Explain!" Sarantha commanded. "Human combat systems evolve differently than most species, Your Majesty. We're not the strongest, fastest, or most durable. So we develop methods that turn an opponent's advantages against them. Cadet Chen specialized in submission techniques, systems designed to control and disable without requiring superior physical capabilities." "That seems like an admission of weakness," Threkis interjected. Webb's expression remained diplomatic, but Sarantha caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's practical adaptation. A human child can learn to defend themselves against a larger, stronger attacker using these principles. We've built our entire martial philosophy around the assumption that we'll always be the smaller fighter. Below, medical personnel attended to Vornak. His arm would heal, but the damage to his pride would last longer. The mighty elite warrior had been defeated by someone who never stood up. Sarantha made a decision that would alter the trajectory of coalition military integration. "Captain Webb, I want detailed briefings on all human combat methodologies. Not summaries, complete technical analysis. Your Majesty, with respect, our combat systems take years to master. I'm aware. Begin with what happened here today. I want to understand exactly how Cadet Chen accomplished this." Webb nodded slowly. I'll arrange it. Sarantha returned her attention to the training floor, where Chen was helping Vornak to his feet with quiet professionalism. The human looked small next to the towering elite, yet Sarantha now saw her differently. The Coalition had integrated species based on strength, technology, strategic resources. Humanity had qualified on marginal criteria, barely meeting minimum thresholds. But watching Chen's precise, devastating efficiency, Sarantha wondered if the evaluation metrics themselves were fundamentally flawed. What other capabilities had been overlooked? What other assumptions needed challenging? The observation deck buzzed with uncomfortable conversation. The demonstration had violated the expected order of things, and no one quite knew how to process what they'd witnessed. Sarantha remained silent, watching, calculating. The universe had just become more interesting. Captain Marcus Webb stood in Queen Sarantha's private briefing chamber 12 hours after the incident, surrounded by holographic displays showing human anatomical diagrams and combat technique demonstrations. The Queen's four eyes tracked every detail with an intensity that made most beings uncomfortable. Webb had served in enough diplomatic posts to recognize genuine intellectual curiosity when he saw it. Start from the fundamental concept, Sarantha commanded. Assume I know nothing? Webb activated the primary display. Human martial arts evolved from a simple biological reality. We're prey animals who became predators through intelligence rather than physical superiority. When early humans fought megafauna or each other, direct strength contests usually meant death. We developed fighting systems based on leverage, anatomical vulnerability, and biomechanical manipulation. A hologram of a human skeleton appeared with highlighted pressure points and joint structures. Every limb has a natural range of motion. Force applied outside that range causes damage. The skill isn't in the force applied, it's in the precision of application and the redirection of existing momentum. Show me the specific technique Cadet Chen employed, Sarantha said. Webb pulled up the slowed footage from the training hall. This is a variation of Aikido, a Japanese martial art roughly 800 Earth years old. The principle is called Aiki, harmonizing with an opponent's energy rather than opposing it directly. Chen didn't block Vornak's strike. She received it, guided it, and completed its natural trajectory past the point where his anatomy could accommodate the motion. He highlighted 3 points on the hologram corresponding to where Chen's fingers had made contact. These pressure points are nerve clusters and joint seams. Applying specific pressure creates momentary paralysis or compliance response. Combined with the rotational force Chen applied, Vornak's own strength and momentum became the weapon against him. Sarantha studied the display. This requires extraordinary precision. Yes, Chen is trained since childhood. Humans begin learning these systems as young as 4 years old. By the time they're adults, the movements are neurologically hardwired. It becomes reflex. Your species teaches children to break arms? Webb heard the edge in her question. We teach children to defend themselves when physically overmatched. The universe is full of beings stronger than us. We adapted to that reality. The broken arm was unfortunate, but Vornak was attempting to deliver a strike that would have hospitalized Chen for weeks. She responded proportionally to the threat. Sarantha's posture shifted slightly, a gesture Webb's xenop psychology training identified as contemplation. Your entire species is built around the assumption of disadvantage. Not disadvantage, different advantage. We're not the strongest, but we're adaptive. We're not the fastest, but we're persistent. We studied other species' capabilities for centuries before achieving spaceflight, and we built our military doctrine around realistic threat assessment. When you assume you'll fight opponents who outclass you physically, you develop creative solutions. The Queen was silent for a long moment, her secondary eyes reviewing the technical data while her primary eyes remained fixed on Webb. The Coalition's military structure is built on conventional force projection, strength, firepower, numerical superiority. Your approach suggests an entirely different strategic framework. Yes, Your Majesty. And if this framework were integrated into Coalition training protocols? Webb had anticipated this question. It would fundamentally alter combat doctrine across the Alliance. Most species rely on genetic or technological advantages. Teaching them to fight as if they don't have those advantages would be challenging. It requires accepting vulnerability as the starting assumption. But the tactical benefits would be substantial. In specific scenarios, yes. Humans excel at asymmetric warfare, hostage rescue, close-quarters combat, situations where superior force can't be applied directly. We're also exceptionally good at fighting opponents we shouldn't be able to defeat, because that's what we've always done. Sarantha moved to the window overlooking the palace grounds. Night had fallen, and 3 moons cast silver light across the gardens. Ambassador Threkis called your species' physical limitations laughable. He wasn't wrong by conventional metrics. Yet Cadet Chen defeated an elite warrior who represents the pinnacle of conventional martial capability. This creates a logical contradiction that troubles the Coalition's foundational assumptions. Webb chose his words carefully. Your Majesty, humanity's admission to the Coalition was controversial. We know this. We barely met the criteria. But perhaps the criteria measure the wrong things. We don't bring overwhelming strength or ancient technology. We bring adaptation, persistence, and the accumulated wisdom of a species that survived by being smarter and more creative than things trying to kill us. And you believe this wisdom has military value? Not just military. The human approach to problem-solving assumes limited resources, hostile environments, and superior opposition. Those assumptions force innovation. They force us to find solutions that don't rely on being the biggest or strongest. In a galaxy full of threats, that flexibility might be more valuable than raw power. Sarantha turned back to face him. You make a compelling argument, Captain Webb. However, arguing and demonstrating are different things. Cadet Chen's performance was impressive, but it was one incident. To integrate human combat methodologies into Coalition training, I need comprehensive evidence of effectiveness across multiple scenarios and against various species. That's reasonable, Your Majesty. Therefore, I'm ordering a series of evaluation exercises. Abat, your human cadets will face opponents from every Coalition warrior class, full contact, supervised conditions, comprehensive documentation. If your methods prove as effective as you claim, we'll discuss integration protocols. If they don't, humanity's military contribution to the Coalition will remain limited to support roles. Webb felt the weight of what she was proposing. She was offering humanity a chance to prove itself, but also creating a public test that could confirm every skeptic's doubts. If the human cadets failed, it would reinforce the perception that humans were marginal members barely qualified for inclusion. I'll need authorization from Earth Command, Webb said. Of course. I'll allow 72 hours for approval. This is not punishment, Captain. This is opportunity. Your species has claimed capabilities beyond your physical specifications. I'm offering you the chance to demonstrate those claims before the entire Coalition. That's more than most species receive. She was right. This was an unprecedented opportunity, but it came with devastating risk. Webb had spent years in diplomatic service managing perceptions of humanity. This decision would either validate everything humans brought to the Coalition or confirm the worst assumptions about their inadequacy. I'll contact Earth Command immediately, he said. One more thing, Captain. Sarantha's tone shifted, becoming less formal. I watched Cadet Chen help Vornak to his feet after their match. Despite defeating him, despite his earlier condescension, she showed respect. That behavior is noteworthy. It suggests your species understands that true strength includes restraint. Webb nodded. We have a saying, Your Majesty. A warrior's greatest victory is the fight they prevent. Chen could have humiliated Vornak. She chose not to. That choice reveals more about her training than the technique itself. Then perhaps your greatest demonstration won't be in combat at all, Sarantha said quietly. Perhaps it will be in showing the Coalition what strength looks like when it doesn't announce itself. Webb left the briefing chamber with his mind racing through implications and consequences. Within the hour, he would be in encrypted communication with Earth Command, explaining that humanity's entire future in the Coalition might depend on how well a handful of cadets could fight opponents who should destroy them. The universe had given humanity a chance. Now they had to prove they deserved it. The message reached Earth Command at 347 Greenwich Mean Time. Admiral Catherine Zhao read Captain Webb's report 3 times before summoning her senior staff. By 0600, 16 people sat around the secure conference table in Geneva, representing military leadership, diplomatic corps, and civilian oversight. They're testing us, Zhao said without preamble. Queen Sarantha is offering what looks like opportunity, but it's also a trap. If our cadets fail publicly, we confirm every doubt about human capability. If they succeed, we challenge the fundamental power structure of the entire Coalition. Either outcome carries enormous risk. We should accept, said General Marcus Chen. No relation to Kayla Chen, though he'd already reviewed her service record with satisfaction. This is exactly the opening we've needed. Humanity has been treated as a probationary member since admission. We've been given marginal assignments, excluded from strategic planning, and patronized by species who think genetic strength equals capability. Here's our chance to prove otherwise. By sending children to fight trained warriors in front of the galaxy, countered Ambassador Lu Wei. If we lose, the humiliation sets humanity back decades. The Coalition already views us as barely qualified. Public failure confirms that status permanently. Zhao pulled up holographic profiles of the 37 human cadets currently in Coalition training. Webb's report specifies full contact evaluations against opponents from every warrior class. That means our cadets face Corthanelitas, Saurian battle forms, crystalline guardians, and probably a dozen other species specifically selected to exploit human weaknesses. The Coalition isn't arranging fair fights. They're arranging demonstrations of our limitations. Then we don't accept fair fights, said Colonel Sarah Martinez, commander of Special Operations. Human combat doctrine assumes unfair fights. That's our entire strategic philosophy. We've spent centuries developing methods to win against superior opponents. This is what we train for. Against human opponents, Lu Wei interjected. We've never tested these methodologies against alien physiology at scale. Individual incidents like Cadet Chen's don't establish systematic effectiveness. We're extrapolating from insufficient data. Martinez leaned forward. Ambassador, with respect, you're wrong. We've been testing against alien physiology for 18 months in classified training programs. When we gained Coalition membership, Strategic Command authorized cross-species combat research. We've studied biological vulnerabilities, joint mechanics, and neurological pressure points for every major Coalition species. The data exists. It's just classified. Zhao's expression remained neutral, but she felt satisfaction at Martinez's revelation. The colonel was right. Humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario since Coalition admission. The question wasn't capability, it was risk management. Show me the data, Zhao commanded. Martinez activated secure files, the holographic display filled with anatomical diagrams, combat simulations, and test results. We've conducted controlled experiments with volunteer subjects from allied species. Success rates for human submission techniques against physically superior opponents range from 63 to 78% across species categories. Joint manipulation works on any species with articulated limbs. Pressure point targeting is effective against any species with centralized nervous systems. Momentum redirection principles apply regardless of mass or strength differences. Those are controlled experiments, Lu Wei countered. Cooperative volunteers in safe environments. Combat introduces chaos, aggression, and psychological factors that laboratory conditions can't replicate. Which is why we also ran live combat scenarios, Martinez continued, using full-contact sparring with allied military personnel under combat conditions. Human specialists achieved victory rates of 70 to 1% against Corthan opponents, 68% against Saurians, and 82% against crystalline warriors. The data supports operational effectiveness. Zhao studied the statistics. 70% success rates would be acceptable in most military scenarios, but this wasn't a military operation. This was political theater with military components. A 30% failure rate in public demonstrations would be catastrophic. What about psychological warfare? Asked Dr. James Park, the civilian oversight representative. The Coalition expects humans to fail. That expectation creates pressure that affects performance. Our cadets will be fighting while knowing that billions across the galaxy are watching, expecting their defeat. That's not a combat variable. That's a psychological burden that could break even trained warriors. Human psychology is built for that pressure, Martinez said quietly. We're the species that evolved knowing everything wanted to eat us. We developed civilization while facing extinction-level threats every generation. Psychological pressure doesn't break humans. It focuses us. Ask any athlete, any performer, any soldier who served in combat. We perform better when the stakes are highest. Zhao considered the arguments. Military capability said accept. Political caution said decline. The decision would shape humanity's position in the galactic community for generations. What do the cadets say? Zhao asked. Has anyone asked them? Webb's report included a supplementary file. Zhao opened it and found a message recorded by Kayla Chen 6 hours after her match with Vornak. The young woman's face appeared in the hologram, her expression calm and professional. Admiral Zhao, if you're watching this, Captain Webb has explained the situation. I understand the political implications. I understand the risk of failure, but I also understand what's actually being tested here. The Coalition wants to know if humans deserve a place among the warrior species. They're asking if we can fight. I think we need to show them we already have been fighting. We fought predators to survive prehistory. We fought each other through millennia of war. We fought hostile environments to reach space. We've been fighting our entire existence. The question isn't whether humans can fight. It's whether the Coalition is ready to see what human fighting looks like. I volunteer for the evaluation exercises. So does every human cadet I've spoken with. We're ready to show the galaxy what humanity means. Zhao played the message twice more. Chen spoke with the confidence of someone who understood the stakes and accepted them. Around the table, she saw the same recognition in her colleagues' faces. This wasn't about pride or politics, it was about defining humanity's place in the universe. We accept Queen Sarantha's proposal, Zhao said, but on modified terms. We agree to full contact evaluations with comprehensive documentation. However, we request mixed scenario testing, not just single combat, but also team operations, defensive scenarios, and strategic planning exercises. If the Coalition wants to evaluate human military capability, they should evaluate all aspects, not just individual combat prowess. That's a significant expansion, Lue observed. It increases both our opportunity and our exposure. Yes, but it also plays to human strengths. We're not just individual warriors, we're team fighters who developed pack-hunting strategies millions of years before we built cities. If we're going to demonstrate human capability, we demonstrate all of it. General Chen nodded approval. I'll coordinate with Webb to establish protocols. We'll need detailed briefings on each opposing species, environmental parameters, and success criteria. This can't be subjective evaluation. We need objective metrics that define victory and defeat. Martinez, you'll oversee combat preparation. I want every cadet drilled on alien physiology, every technique refined for maximum effectiveness. Lue, you'll manage diplomatic messaging. We're not presenting this as confrontation. We're presenting it as educational exchange that demonstrates diversity in military methodology. Dr. Park, you'll handle psychological support. Our cadets need to understand the pressure they're facing and develop strategies to manage it. The meeting continued for 3 more hours, establishing protocols, assigning responsibilities, and planning for contingencies. By the time they adjourned, humanity's response was ready. Earth Command would accept Queen Sarantha's challenge, expand its scope, and demonstrate that human capability extended far beyond physical specifications. Zhao remained in the conference room after the others left, studying Chen's message one final time. The young cadet's words echoed the sentiment that had driven humanity since the beginning. We're ready to show the galaxy what humanity means. The question was whether the galaxy was ready to see it. 3 weeks later, the Coalition training complex on Arcturus 3 had been transformed into a demonstration arena. Observation platforms held representatives from 43 member species, diplomatic envoys, military commanders, and media representatives broadcasting to 1,700 worlds. The entire galaxy was watching. Queen Sarantha sat in the Royal Observation Box, flanked by her senior military advisors and the Coalition Council. She had expected humanity to quietly accept limited evaluation. Instead, Earth Command had expanded the scope into a comprehensive military capability demonstration that would test not just combat skills but strategic thinking, adaptability, and psychological resilience. The humans had either extraordinary confidence or suicidal foolishness. In 3 hours, she would know which. The first scenario will test individual combat capability across species matchups, announced Combat Marshal Drevok, a Korthan commander who'd served for 40 years. Human cadets will face opponents from 12 species in single combat. Standard combat protocols apply. Matches continue until submission, incapacitation, or 3-count pin. Lethal force is prohibited. Medical teams are standing by. In the preparation area below, 37 human cadets stood in formation. Sarantha studied them through magnified display. They looked impossibly young and fragile compared to the warrior representatives they would face. The humans wore standard combat uniforms without armor or enhancement, adhering to their request that the demonstration show baseline human capability without technological assistance. It seemed like madness. Kayla Chen stepped forward as the first human competitor. Her opponent was a saurian battleform named Kreth, standing 9 feet tall with armored scales and claws designed for rending. The size difference was absurd. Chen looked like prey facing a predator. "This is going to be a massacre," muttered one of Sarantha's advisors. The match began. Kreth charged with the speed that made Saurians feared across the Coalition. His claws swept toward Chen in strikes that could disembowel an armored warrior. Chen moved inside his reach, too close for the claws to achieve full extension. Her hands found pressure points along his scaled throat, vulnerable spots that Saurian anatomy tried to protect but couldn't completely hide. Kreth's roar became a choking gasp as Chen applied precisely calibrated pressure to his vagus nerve cluster. When he reached to pull her away, she shifted her weight and guided his own momentum into a throw that sent his massive body crashing to the mat. Before he could recover, Chen locked his arm in a position that forced submission or permanent joint damage. Kreth tapped the mat. Submission. Victory to the human. The arena fell silent. Then Chen helped Kreth to his feet with the same courtesy she'd shown Vornak, bowing slightly before returning to the human formation. The second match featured Mark Patterson against a crystalline guardian. Crystalline warriors were living minerals, nearly indestructible by conventional combat standards. Patterson studied his opponent for 3 full seconds before engaging, long enough that spectators began murmuring about hesitation. Then Patterson struck, not against the crystalline's body, but against the mat beneath its feet. The impact sent vibrations through the surface at a frequency that disrupted the crystalline's molecular cohesion. The warrior's form destabilized for exactly 2.1 seconds, long enough for Patterson to strike its core lattice with a precision blow that forced emergency shutdown. Victory to the human. The matches continued. 12 human cadets faced 12 alien warriors representing the Coalition's most formidable species. The humans won 9 matches, fought to a draw in 2, and lost 1 when Sofia Ramirez faced a Korthan elite whose defensive discipline prevented her from finding the necessary openings. 9 victories out of 12 exceeded all projected outcomes. The observation platforms buzzed with shocked conversation. The humans hadn't just competed, they had dominated opponents who should have destroyed them. How? Threkus demanded, his disbelief evident. How are they doing this? Captain Webb stood at the edge of the royal box, his expression professionally neutral, but Sarantha caught the satisfaction in his eyes. They're doing exactly what humans have always done, fighting smarter when they can't fight harder. Every technique is based on anatomical study, biomechanical analysis, and exploiting natural vulnerabilities that all organic species possess. We don't need to be stronger, we need to be precise. That's 9 individual victories, Sarantha said. What about the team scenarios? The demonstration shifted to squad-level operations. 6 human cadets faced 18 opponents in a defensive scenario designed to test tactical coordination under overwhelming numerical disadvantage. The humans established a defensive position that forced attackers into constrained approaches, used overlapping fields of fire and mutual support to counter superior numbers, and employed psychological warfare that disrupted enemy coordination. The attacking force achieved their objective, but only after sustaining 72% casualties against a defending force 1/3 their size. In military terms, the humans had won despite technically losing the scenario. The strategic planning exercise came next. Human cadets were given a complex tactical problem that had confounded Coalition military planners for weeks: how to extract hostages from a fortified position held by superior forces with better equipment and complete intelligence advantage. The humans solved it in 47 minutes. Their solution involved misdirection, exploitation of environmental factors that Coalition planners had dismissed as irrelevant, and psychological manipulation that turned the enemy's strengths into vulnerabilities. When tested in simulation, the human plan achieved 94% success rate compared to the 17% success rate of the Coalition's best strategy. Sarantha watched the final scenario with an emotion she rarely experienced: genuine surprise. The humans weren't just competent. They were exceptional in ways that Coalition military doctrine couldn't accommodate. They thought differently, fought differently, and approached problems from angles that other species never considered. Your Majesty? Dravok's voice came through the private comm channel. We need to discuss implications. If human combat methodologies become widely integrated, it changes everything about Coalition military structure. These aren't just tactical innovations. They're philosophical challenges to how we conceptualize warfare itself. I am aware, Marshal. Continue observations. The demonstration concluded with a mixed species team exercise. 6 humans, 6 Korthan warriors, 6 Saurians, and 6 Crystalline Guardians were formed into a combined unit and given an impossible mission: assault a position defended by 30 elite warriors from 4 different species. The mixed team failed initially, their coordination hampered by different tactical philosophies and communication barriers. Then the humans did something unexpected. Instead of trying to lead or compete, they adapted. They learned each species' natural fighting style, found ways to integrate their own capabilities into supporting roles, and created tactical synergies that maximized every species' strengths while minimizing weaknesses. The defending force was overwhelmed not by superior numbers or firepower, but by coordinated tactics that none of the defending species had trained to counter. When the demonstration ended, the arena remained silent for a full 10 seconds. Then the coalition representatives began talking all at once, their voices overlapping in heated discussion about what they'd witnessed. Sarantha raised one hand. Silence fell immediately. "Captain Webb," she said, "your cadets have demonstrated exceptional capability. However, I have questions that extend beyond tactical performance. The restraint your cadets showed toward defeated opponents suggests training that emphasizes honor over victory. Explain this philosophy." Webb stepped forward. "Your Majesty, human martial traditions teach that how you win matters as much as winning. True strength includes mercy. True victory includes respect for those you defeat. We teach our warriors that the opponent who surrenders deserves honor, and the fight you prevent is greater than the fight you win. This isn't weakness, it's discipline. It's understanding that violence is a tool to be controlled, not an expression of dominance. This philosophy seems to contradict efficient combat doctrine," observed one of the military advisors. "Does it?" Webb asked. "Or does it create warriors who can be trusted with power? The coalition faces threats that require violence to counter, but you also need military forces that can operate in complex environments where killing isn't always the answer. Humans offer both capabilities, the ability to fight with devastating effectiveness, and the judgment to know when not to fight at all." Sarantha considered his words carefully. The demonstration had proven human military capability beyond reasonable doubt, but Webb's explanation revealed something more valuable, a strategic philosophy that integrated force with restraint, capability with judgment. "I'm prepared to make a decision," she announced. "But first, I want to hear from one of your cadets." Not a prepared statement. A genuine response. Cadet Chen, approach. Kayla Chen stepped forward, her posture respectful but not subservient. She met Sarantha's gaze without flinching, a gesture that most species would consider dangerously disrespectful, but the Queen found herself appreciating the honesty it represented. "Cadet Chen, you defeated Vornak 3 weeks ago, Kreth today, and assisted in successful completion of every team scenario. You've proven human combat capability convincingly. My question is simple. Why did you help your defeated opponents to their feet? Why show respect to those you just humiliated?" Chen didn't hesitate. "Your Majesty, they weren't humiliated. They fought with honor and courage. They gave their best effort against an opponent using unfamiliar techniques. That deserves respect, not mockery. I helped them up because in combat, we're not enemies. We're partners, testing each other's limits. Today's opponent might be tomorrow's ally. Treating them with contempt today ensures they'll never trust you tomorrow. And if they had defeated you, then I would have learned from my failure and worked to improve. Victory teaches you what works, defeat teaches you what doesn't. Both lessons have value if you're humble enough to accept them." Sarantha felt something shift in her perception. The humans weren't warriors in the traditional coalition sense. They were something more nuanced, pragmatists who understood that strength without wisdom was just brutality, and victory without honor was hollow. "I'm issuing an official coalition directive," Sarantha announced. "Human combat methodologies will be integrated into coalition military training programs on a voluntary basis. Species who wish to learn these techniques may request human instructors. Additionally, humanity's status within the coalition is upgraded from probationary membership to full military partner status with voting representation in strategic planning councils." The pronouncement sent shocked murmurs through the observation platforms. Full partnership status granted humanity equal voice with species who had been coalition members for centuries. "Furthermore," Sarantha continued, "I'm establishing a joint training program between human cadets and warriors from all coalition species. Not to replace traditional training, but to supplement it with alternative methodologies. Captain Webb, you will coordinate this program with Coalition Command." "Your Majesty, this is highly irregular," protested Threkis. "Humanity has been a member for barely 2 years. This elevation is earned," Sarantha cut him off. "Today's demonstration proved that military capability isn't measured solely by physical strength or technological advantage. The humans have shown us that intelligence, adaptability, and strategic innovation are equally valuable. More valuable, perhaps, because those qualities can be taught and integrated across species. I'm not elevating humanity because they won some fights. I'm elevating them because they've shown the coalition a better way to think about warfare itself." She turned back to Chen. "Cadet, you're dismissed. Inform your fellow cadets that they've done more than prove human capability. They've challenged us to reconsider our own assumptions. That contribution has more strategic value than any number of military victories." Chen saluted and returned to the human formation. As she walked away, Sarantha noticed something significant. The human cadets showed no visible triumph or celebration. They maintained professional composure, acknowledging their achievement quietly without arrogance or spectacle. They really do fight differently. observed Ravak quietly. Not just in technique, in philosophy. They understand something we've forgotten, that the warrior's greatest strength is knowing when to stop fighting. Sarantha nodded. The demonstration had revealed a truth that made her uncomfortable because it challenged assumptions she'd held for a century. Physical superiority didn't guarantee strategic advantage, and the species that adapted to disadvantage might ultimately prove more valuable than those who relied on natural gifts. Humanity had just taught the Coalition a lesson they desperately needed. Now the question was whether the galaxy's warrior species would be humble enough to learn it.